Welcome to Sega Saturn Shiro, the only podcast that sets your US Saturn collection to sorted. I'm Patrick, and tonight's Shiros are Kay, Peter, and myself.
Before we actually record the rest of our stuff, funny story, a while ago I ended up picking up a copy of Contra, and I saw quite a few of them online, but none of them had the 3D glasses. But this one advertised, 3D glasses included and all the rest of it, so I was super excited. I ended up buying it, and it came, and sure enough, it had the 3D glasses, so, it went on the shelf for a little while because I was busy. Anyways, a few weeks later, I picked it out, and I was going to try the 3D mode, and so I went to put on the 3D glasses, and the person that sold it to me, it wasn't the original glasses, it was like these Burger King 3D glasses. I couldn't believe it. So, I've got it complete, but I've got fake glasses. So when I was hearing, what you were saying, Kay, you bought the PlayStation version, I'm thinking, okay, if that's cheaper, I just might do the same thing, because right now I've got Burger King glasses. So,
hey, you're the king, at least when you play that game.
And yeah, I'm the king, all right?
Wow, that went up. So yeah, there's the two versions. There's like the thick case and the thin case. There's a sealed thick case, and that's like $375.
Oh my god.
Yeah, well...
That's PlayStation?
If you look through them, you may or may not find ones that include the glasses. And I lucked out, I guess. I paid $20 for mine.
Oh, that's disgusting.
Why is that game so expensive for? That game, sucks.
They said it's sealed.
Oh, okay.
Oh, well, you know what? I've seen them online before as well, and I've just never bothered to pick them up. I will eventually get around to it. I'm not overly worried about it because most people don't consider that to be, super rare or whatever. So I'm sure I'll hit it at some point.
All right, so why don't we dive into the world of the Saturn news and see what is going on. Let me start off with my review of Symphony of the Night and Rondo of Blood on vinyl. So for those of you that don't know, I believe it was a couple weeks ago, Mondo Records released both Symphony of the Night and Rondo of Blood on a vinyl record at the exact same time. Usually they've been doing sort of a one-in-one, so one this month, one that month. A couple of weeks ago they did the whole shebang and released both of them at the same time. Starting off with Rondo of Blood, not really a lot of variants, just one variant, the first record with blue with black splatter, and the second disc with red with black splatter. And each disc had each soundtrack, so the first soundtrack had Rondo of Blood for the PC Engine, and the second one had the Castlevania X soundtrack that was on Super Nintendo. The Rondo of Blood record was originally released as a exclusive at San Diego Comic-Con, and sold out pretty quickly and was flipped on eBay for $100 or more. But it was released and it sounds fantastic. As a lot of people know that there's a lot of some issues with the splattering effects on the vinyl record just because it can cause some noise, but this one is really clean sounding in it, and I really enjoyed hearing that amazing soundtrack once again on vinyl. It was amazing, and I love the Rondo of Blood soundtrack. Even Castlevania X, I love the interpretations on the Super Nintendo sound chip. And I would recommend picking that one up for sure if you love Castlevania. In terms of Symphony of the Night, that one had the most variants, where it had the limited edition variant with a black, gold, and bone colored whirl on the record, and that was limited to 1,000 copies. The other variant they had is a translucent red vinyl, like a blood red, like a red wine. It looked really great, and that's the one I went with. The cool thing about the soundtrack is that it had 7 exclusive Saturn tracks that were originally on the Saturn version on the record itself. So it had Guardian, Vampire Killer Remix 1 and 2, Bloody Tears Remix 1 and 2, and then Beginning Remix 1 and 2. Same thing as the Rondo Blood record. It sounds fantastic. It looks great. Packaging is really cool as well. I kind of really wish they would have used the original packaging, but what they use is pretty good. Just the original Saturn packaging by the original artist looked really great. The only downside I had with this record is that it did not have I Am the Wind on it, which was kind of a really big killer for me because I really love that closing credit song. It sort of seemed really relaxing. A lot of people think it seemed out of place, but I thought it was really relaxing and really mellow. Like Rondo Blood record, it sounds amazing, and I love listening to it. Have you guys checked this out or had any interest in picking them up?
Well, I'm a big fan of the Symphony of the Night soundtrack, and I've just not too long ago played through Rondo of Blood, and that sounds really, really awesome too. So, the more you talk about vinyl releases, the more I get tempted to just sort of take the dive and do it, because the sound quality is phenomenal, and these are just top-notch soundtracks. So, yeah, at some point I'm sure I'll dive in as well.
Yeah, definitely. It sounds really great. I love the soundtracks wholeheartedly. And actually just beat Symphony of the Night again on the PlayStation 1, and it's just as great as the first time. Rondo of Blood, I believe it is released through another shop. I don't know exactly the name, but you could probably hunt it down. Symphony of the Night, they sold out of the Translucent Red, the limited edition, and I think the bonus sold out. I'm not 100% sure on that. They also released a black vinyl variant, so if you want to pick that up, you can also do that, and it's readily available. Okay, so moving on to the box of Saturn games found at Sega HQ. So have you guys seen anything about this?
Yeah, so that was, I think it was somebody it was the Sega PR guy on Twitter that posted, that they'd sort of found a bunch of boxes and they'd opened them up and it contained sealed, new games from back in the Saturn days. And I know there was some Guardian Heroes in there. There was some of the Nights into Dreams with the 3D control pad and a few others. And I mean, to me, that is, well, first of all, it's an awesome find. But second of all, I know that Sega, at least back when they were in San Francisco, they sort of had an area in their office, it's almost like a vault, where they kept multiple copies of absolutely everything that they had ever released in the States. So we're talking Master System all the way to the end of Dreamcast. Like, I actually recall seeing photos of inside this particular room, this vault, if you will, and just seeing stacks upon stacks of pristine games throughout the entire 20 or so years that, Sega was pumping out games in North America as a first party. And it's just a sight to behold. And I mean, to find, new old stock like that, I know Sega isn't the first company to sort of come upon that, but that's just something that's supremely special, in my opinion. And just a quick note, in some of the photos that I've got from their sort of vault location, perhaps the most interesting of all of those were stacks of Dreamcast pre-production discs with those Dreamcast labels on them, and people would handwrite whatever was on the disc. And boy, wouldn't I just love to get my hands on all those discs, because I can't even imagine what's on there that maybe never got released or would be super interesting for the community. And I'm sure there's more than just Dreamcast. I'm sure that includes Saturn as well as a whole bunch of other things. So I love reading and hearing about discoveries like that. I think it's super cool and it's exciting. I very much doubt that this is stuff that Sega is going to put out for sale or make available for their fans to somehow get a hold of. I don't think that's going to happen, but it's a really awesome thing to read about. I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah, apparently a lot of the stuff they had that was extra they gave out to other employees, and they had a lot of really rare stuff. Like they had boxes of the Nights into Dreams with the controller with the 3D pad.
Mm-hmm.
They had Guardian Heroes copies, like boxes sealed. And they even have Panzer Dragoon Saga, like just new copies.
That's wow. I mean, that's just wow.
Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous. So, if any of you that worked at Sega HQ got that, well, you guys are lucky. And send me a couple of those Panzer Dragoon Saga copies, please.
All right.
And finally, I'd like to talk about our new announcement. You probably already seen it and probably heard it, hopefully, but we collaborated with Radio Sega to bring our cast to their guest nights. So every Monday night from 7 p.m. GMT, which is 11 a.m. Pacific time, they will be showing different casts. So they have Dreamcast Junkyard, they have us on there, of course, they have the Titan cast, and they have all these other guests that are on the show that they're going to basically show their podcast. So I believe that just starts from the first podcast and up. So I think by the time we watch this, it'll be our second or third cast that will be going up. But yeah, it's going to be great. We'll probably see what we can do in the future, maybe do premiere episodes on there. But yeah, check it out. It's really great. We got some really great feedback from people that really enjoyed the show. And I love hearing people discuss it and talk about things that I talked about like a year ago that I don't even know. It's like, oh yeah, that was really cool when you brought up this and that, Patrick. It's like, bring up what? So I'm hoping that we'll be able to keep doing that and everything will be going well. We'd like to introduce our guests both the immortal John Hancock and Mr. Steve Wright. How's it going, guys?
Hey, guys. It's going great. Thanks for inviting us.
Always a pleasure being on here.
Yeah, it's great to have you guys. We're going to get right into that, which is going to be the tips, guides, and general discussion on collecting North American Saturn games.
So, John and Steve, what got you guys interested in collecting for the Saturn?
John, you can go first, John.
Oh, okay. So I've been a huge Sega fan for a long time. I've been collecting close to 30 years. And for me, it wasn't in particular Sega Saturn, but really just Sega in general. I really am intrigued by the company and the games they produce, and they've made some wonderful arcade quality games and other things. And really, to me, the Sega Saturn was the evolution for me of the love of Sega CD, Sega 32X, Sega Genesis. It was like the next step, and so that's why I got into it. Is that it was really Sega of the future back in the day.
Well, the reason I got started collecting Sega is because back in the day I couldn't afford it. My mom, me and brothers, I had two brothers and two sisters, so we had just one Super Nintendo. And my cousin, he had like Sega Genesis. So when I went over there, the Sega was just like, it was amazing. Like I remember my first day getting, he got Sonic 2. Me and him actually went half and half. I had cut grass for a week, and to get Sonic, it was coming like that little promotion they had, on whatever it was, but I can't remember now. But we both went into KB toy stores. We put our money together, got this big old Sonic package, and we played all night. The music was amazing. And I even played Sonic 1. That was really crazy. I remember just always saying, and all my friends had Sega Genesis, and I always wanted it. So growing up, as I get older, I was able to buy a Sega Saturn. And I remember buying a Sega Saturn, and just the system was just so revolutionized. It was like CD. It was like, look at the system today. It looks better than the PlayStation 4 to me. I mean, it still looks like it could hold up today. It had like a cartridge slide. It had two controllers, the 6-button controller. I still love it. That's the best for the fight. And then like arcade perfect fighting games. I mean, it was just mind blowing. I loved it. And then the long box stuff, craze. I mean, whoever had a big long color magazine, or instruction book. Some of them were okay, but the other was just the amazing artwork. Like I still remember like Mega Man X4. That's still my favorite game. I love that game. And the music, it just so much for Sega Saturn. So yeah, I can go on and on. I just love it.
Man, you have excellent taste in Mega Man games, dude.
I love it. Yeah, I love Mega Man X4. It's such a good game. The soundtrack, and then it's just so different from the PlayStation version. It's like so much stuff is happening under the background, and the music and the animation. Even the animation on Mega Man 8 on the Saturn. It's so cheesy, but it's still so good.
That voice acting, though, man, it's like golden standard.
Oh my goodness, tell me about it. So cheesy.
So what would you guys say is the most interesting piece that you've collected so far for Saturn? Why don't we start with you, Steve?
My white Japanese Sega Saturn, because when I was stationed in Japan, I remember when the Dreamcast first came out, and I never knew there was a white version of the Sega Saturn. So when I was getting ready to leave and come back to the States, I found out about a white Sega Saturn, and I saw it in Akihabara, and I was like, oh my goodness, this is like a white Sega Saturn. It was just pure clean. It was just excellent. It was so pretty. So I had to always get one. So years later, I finally able to get one, and when I found out that you only need a Pro Action Replay to play both US and Japanese games, I was amazed. I was like, okay, I still like the regular US Model 2 Saturn, but that white one, it just something speaks to it. When you see it, it's eye-catching. It's like it stands out in front of all your other video game systems. So I think that's pretty interesting that I have.
I'm going to agree with you. Like, I have so many different Sega Saturn consoles, and they're all US consoles. They're all nice and black and all the rest of it. But I do have, even though I have ways of playing Japanese games on these systems, I do have a white Saturn because it just looks super classy, So I love it. It's great.
It's an amazing system. Sega really put their heart. You can see they really put their heart in the system. Too bad that the marketing sucked over here and it came out of the bad time after all that failed 32X garbage, which I hated, but I mean, it failed, but it was still a great looking system. You can see the heart and soul of Sega, just in that system.
Well, and you know what? I think that's why it's one of the top sort of collectible systems today. Because yeah, you're right. People in the day, they just ignored it. There was no, need for it like there was for PlayStation or Nintendo 64. But nowadays, people are just flocking to it because they're just discovering all this amazing stuff that you can play on the Saturn. John, what about with you? What's sort of the most interesting piece that you've got in your Saturn collection so far?
Well, the nice thing about collecting a long time is that you kind of collect things before like the hype and the buzz and the popularity of something. I've been collecting a long time, and my love for Saturn's very gradual. I have a lot of interesting pieces. I have import games. I have a near complete collection. But the one thing I really think is odd is the Lost and Found volumes 1 through 3. I don't know of many people that have all 3 volumes together. And what these are is these were either demos or unreleased footage or commercials and or unreleased games on separate volumes. And it's really hard to complete these. The first one was offered at Classic Gaming Expo in 2004, and it's nothing great, but it's one of these things where there's only so many copies of it. Less than 50 copies of each volume floating around. You had to go to a show, and you had to be present. And it's just one of these things, like in the aftermarket, it's pretty tough to hunt these down. And so that to me is the weird stuff I like collecting, is going after the kind of these obscure side note projects that someone thought were interesting enough that people would actually pay money for. And it's just neat, and it's nice to see that there's more of these projects now coming out and in a more professional packaging and stuff. And so, yeah. That would be my more interesting piece for my Saturn collection. For
sure, Lost and Found is not even something that I think too many people, have heard of, like you mentioned. My favorite piece out of the whole Lost and Found set, there's an old, I think it was like a McDonald's crossover with Batman commercial that's on one of those discs, and it's the video quality on the Saturn is actually really good, but it's like a cheesy 90s video, and it was promoting, I can't remember which Batman movie was coming out at the time, and the girl was taking an order, and the manager told her to go get more fry boxes or something, and she goes to the back room and discovers the secret entrance to the Batcave, and like it was just pure cheese. But that's the kind of stuff that Lost and Found had, and I agree with you. I think it's super interesting, the sort of obscure things that you can pick up for the Saturn.
There's only 25 copies of the first run. I apologize. I think I said 50, but yeah, there's actually only 25 copies of the first one, just to make it that more painful.
And John Hancock has 10 of them. No, just playing.
Yeah, no, that was funny. No, I definitely just one copy.
I actually have to go in over John's house one of these days and dump his copy of 3, because I have a copy of 3, and the creator of that did not put the data on the second disc.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
It's literally like a blank disc.
Yeah, it's literally a blank disc with the Lost and Found label on it. Number
Wow.
21, I think. It's kind of a funny story. So I was like, I don't know whether or not to keep it blank and then just, get a copy, or get John's dump and then burn it to that disc.
And mine may not have anything on it either. I think it's important to note that whole project was barely made, and part of it was uncertain on if there would be a demand. It was released at a time in which very little Saturn stuff. Saturn was like something newer. And so it was an interesting project. And so, yeah, I'd love to see what mine has on it. Look forward to that, Kay.
I'm thinking that maybe the data was on there, but maybe just after years it maybe just rotted or something like that. Because I know that there's on an old CDR, right? Just like a disc.
It literally comes up as blank and asks me if I want to record.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Because I know that happened to me in a couple CDRs I own that I burnt in 2003 that are just don't even work and I don't really recognize. So
hey, speaking of burnt disc or the CD disc about the Saturn, how many of the Saturn games can you put in a regular CD player and listen to the soundtrack? Because I know a couple games you can do that with.
There's actually a ton. A lot of it I've actually ripped audio from. I know Batsugun you can, as long as it has Redbook audio, you should be able to.
That's another thing that's amazing too, because Sega always kind of put stuff for just a little bit just to test to see what's out there. Nintendo was always super duper safe. Even going back with, I don't want to get off topic, but like the Mortal Kombat, I say trilogy, but the Scandal or whatever you want to call it. Sega said, "Hey, come on over. We have blood." Nintendo said, "No, we got great sweat, but we still got good graphics." And Sega was putting soundtracks on stuff where I know as a kid I love soundtracks. Video game soundtracks.
The easy way to check for that is drop it into your system with the lid open, and it'll come up to the CD player. If you close the lid and it says start application, you can use the shoulder buttons to skip ahead a track. And when you do skip ahead a track, it plays music, then you can put that into your CD player.
Okay, that'd be cool then.
Yeah, and it's more, and really anything with Redbook Audio could do that. Like a lot of the Sega CD games, a lot of them with Redbook Audio, like I know for fact Snatcher, you can listen to straight, like just put in your CD drive, or like a CD-ROM or CD player, and you can listen to it. A lot of the funny thing with Snatcher though is that a lot of the audio tracks with the music are on the disc, so you'll have the music, but you'll have the audio of them talking as well, which I thought was pretty funny, but.
What's even more interesting about how forward-thinking Sega was with this system is that there are a few Saturn games, mostly I believe in Japan, not exclusively Japanese, where you can drop the disc into a PC and you'll actually find like wallpaper, things of that nature.
Yeah, I know that both Toy Commander and Sonic Adventure on the Dreamcast is able to do that. Was there any Saturn games that specifically had that too?
I think most of the Sonic Team games did have that. Like I know Burning Rangers has a whole bunch of wallpapers, so does Sonic Jam, Nights into Dreams, so those are the ones that come to mind for me.
That's pretty cool. Sega was such a promising company, they just didn't know how to market, and I just kind of blame that on the Japanese market because they're very stingy. They don't like to work with a lot of people. Even the stuff with the YouTube stuff, how Nintendo takes down content, they just always been real bullish and pig-headed and just set in their ways. And that stuff didn't fly over here. Sad to say, they just faded away, just like, we were going to put up with that.
Definitely. I personally, I think if they would have took the risks at Japan, I think they would have been successful. But, I mean, that's how time rolls, I guess, right?
Well, I think it's important to know that they kind of ticked off a lot of development by launching the Saturn early, and a lot of people were just mad at that. I think they didn't launch the Saturn, and I think that really ticked off the North American market, and really caused a lot of issues.
Gotcha. So one of the things I'd like to ask you is how close are you guys to completing your Saturn collection goals?
Me, I'm done. I set out a goal, and I thought I wouldn't complete it. And I don't know, because somebody joked and said, you need to check and see if you did this the fastest. I really don't know. But I wanted to complete a full retail set of Sega Saturn games. I wanted to do it, like I said, I wanted to do it in a year. And I ended up doing it in 8 months. I didn't even know I was going to do it that fast because at one point I just hit a roadblock. Like all the games I bought, it was just dried out everywhere. So I had to start leaving the state and going to shows and different stuff. But in 8 months, like about a couple weeks ago, I finished a whole retail set. Now, a retail set for me is all the games you can buy in the store. Now, a lot of people, I said that, what about Daytona USA Netlink? I said, well, that was a mail-in offer, and you can buy it in the store. And it's up and down with that. But I don't know why people was fussing with that. But, you also had to have 2 or 3 people I had to block. And, even from YouTube and just saying, well, you didn't do all this stuff. Like, well, let's don't look at the negative. Look at the positive. It's a lot of hard work, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, as they say.
Exactly. And it's not their collection. It's your collection. Yeah,
it's my collection. And I don't want to be a rude to nobody about it, nothing like that, because they're all video games, and video games supposed to make people happy. And going on the journey with me, I saw a lot of people like that. And I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. Come on, let's put it out there and let's see how it goes. And I have some nice people even donate me some games and stuff, And John, he donated the game to me one time at the show. It was really nice, and gave back to him on some stuff. So it was some really good, love, completing this set, I found some hard to find games. It's amazing, man, how fast I got this set. How I started to get this set was in March of this year. I traded off an Xbox One X and like 5 or 6 games and some Blu-rays or some 4K movies. I was just so disappointed with Xbox One X, and I was just so disappointed with it. I'm not playing. I'm playing my PlayStation 4 more. I'm not an Xbox guy. I'm not a PlayStation guy. I'm a game guy. I was just disappointed with the system, so I just put it out there and said, hey, I want to sell this or trade, and say, hey, I got some Sega Saturn games. I'm like, oh man, I remember I love the Sega Saturn. I want another Sega Saturn game. So we met up. It was about like a 2-hour trip, and he had like 40 games, and I picked through which ones I wanted, and I handed it off to him because I always keep my stuff as a collector. We always keep our stuff in a box and with manuals and everything. So we handed it over. Said, man, do you need anything else? No, we shook on it, and we went our separate ways, and that was when it bit me. I said, and someone say, I went to one of my stores to my friend. He said, you got all that for this? I said, yeah. I said, I can always get another Xbox One X, but I said, it's hard that you get Sega Saturn games. He said, yeah, you're right about that. He said, you should go for a full set. I said, man, I never went for a full set. I'm not a full set type of guy. He said, you should try to do it. I said, it probably can't be done. I said, it probably can. I said, okay, I'll do it. He said, you gonna do it? I said, yeah, I'll do it. And just like that, I just started looking for Sega Saturn games. They just started popping up. I guess I'm a big believer of writing things down, writing your goals down, and letting them manifest. So anything I want, it's really kind of amazing that I wrote down just all kind of stuff. And I go back and look through my phone like, oh, I got that. Like Panzer Dragoon Saga or, Contra, or I'm looking at another game right here, like Die Hard Arcade, or just even Busted Move 3, which that was crazy. I can't believe they messed up. I got that for like $30 from Movie Trading Company. You know how Movie Trading Company is sometimes. So just
Gotcha.
things like that. It just, I wrote it down and it happened. So yeah, that's my personal goal, and I guess I did achieve it.
Man, that's you gotta say, I think that's really amazing that you just sat down, did your goal, and that's why I really, really love your collection. What you've been, because I think everybody's been seeing you post about it, getting more and more, and I always love seeing that. It's like, oh, he knows what he wants to do. Like, he has a target goal, he's gonna reach it, and I think that's what a lot of people should do for the collecting. Be like, you want this, and you're gonna do it. I want this game or or all of it, and that's sort of what I liked about that.
Oh, thank you, man. It's a power, the power of positivity, You just got to write stuff down and just think about it and do it. And also, to find some good people and to trade with, too.
What about yourself, John?
So, for me, I think the biggest challenge is because I collect so many different things and want to have a video game comprehensive collection for a future museum. And so that's always been my number one goal. And so it's a monumental task to try to have a comprehensive collection of everything as best as possible on a budget. And it's been a great journey. I have 28 complete game collections, North American. And this last year, because my Nintendo collection was on public display, I really was focused on that because, I wanted to have as many of the games complete as possible. And it's when your collection goes on public display, every little dent, every little scratch, every little thing is just there. And so that was my focus for this last year. But I've been collecting Saturn for 20 years, and it's evolved. I didn't go out with a goal of having a set, and it's gotten closer and closer. And I met people like Steve that helped me out, and people along the way. And I've gotten a couple games every year, and now it's down to 13. I'm down like 13 games, and I have 13 parts of games that I need that are separate than that. So I'm in the like 25 range of completing the set. And for me, whenever you go for a set or say, I'm going to complete a set, you're going to have immediate judgment of people say, well, you don't include this, you don't include that. And for me, my definition of a complete set would be every variation of every retail game offered for the collection. And then everything else is in like a separate category, like demos and variations and stuff. So, the hardcore people that specialize on like a particular set can get real nitty gritty and picky on like what's all included, and there never will be a consensus. But I think if you have a version of every game included with your collection, for me personally, that's good. And so I'm still on the journey. I am working on a larger sale for Daytona, and hopefully I'll have that in my possession soon. So that's exciting. That's something I never thought I'd have in my collection. I definitely really enjoy collecting for the set. And for me, I've just picked at it over the years. And so this is something 20 years in the making for me.
Okay, so I've been collecting for Saturn for an extremely long time, and I think it was back in like 2008, 2009 that I thought, I'm going to go all the way, I'm going to go, for every retail game. Mm-hmm. And in 2010, I achieved that goal. So, and I mean every retail game. So that didn't include Daytona Netlink, although I came quite close to picking one up. And it didn't include a demo that was missing, and that was Sega Screams Volume 2. But in any event, I did get every single retail game. But then in 2014, I had a bit of some challenges in life, and I ended up selling off a good portion of them. And of course, it only took a few months for me to really regret that decision, and so I've sort of rebuilt back up. Since then, I've been wanting to rebuild my collection, and I'm really kind of just back up to all retail games minus 2. The 2 that I'm still looking for are Winning Post and Galaxy Fight. I'm just waiting for the right time and the right price to come along to snatch them up, and no big rush for me, but it is pretty exciting. It's pretty cool.
I really wish I could say like I'm doing this and that for a set, but really I think my goal with the Saturn was just to play the games mostly. As I think the thing I like about the Saturn the most is that every time I think I know it all, there's something that just goes left field and hits me in the side of the face that I don't know anything about. So I have a small collection, nothing too big, but mostly my collection stuff is just games that I really want to play. So like Symphony of the Night, House of the Dead, things of that nature, like the games that really interest me. Since I got the Rhea, a lot of stuff has been just stuff that's been ripped from my collection or just stuff I found online. So mostly just playing wise, and due to the way that my collecting is just all over the place for like Dreamcast, Neo Geo, Sega Saturn, SNES, I kind of cooled down a bit on Sega Saturn, especially with the prices of the US games and all the games in Japan that I really want that are sort of going up in price. So I kind of became more of a gamer than a collector, unfortunately, because I'd love to get all those big box games and all those really cool case and stuff, but it's like when you're spending $100 per Neo Geo game, MVS game almost, and when you get in that upper echelon of the Dreamcast stuff, you kind of have to see what's the most important in the collection. If you want to get that extra Dreamcast game that you always wanted to play, but you didn't have the GD-ROM, or just a Saturn game that you already have on the Rhea.
The thing that I find fascinating about this particular cast and this group of people is that we have a bunch of collectors of various types. Steve kind of being the newbie who has decimated the collection, like one of the fastest I've ever seen, and John, who is handling multiple collections, and juggling them all, getting them as he can, and Peter, who I did not know. So does that mean that you still actually have Daytona Netlink, Peter, or did you skip out on that one?
That's still one that I'm on the lookout for.
Okay, so it's not just Galaxy Fight and Winning Post, but it's also Daytona Netlink and then Screams Volume 2, I'm assuming. I started my Saturn collection back in like 97 because I bought one from Blockbuster. Anyone who's listened to the first cast knows about my Blockbuster Saturn story. But I, as of about a week or two ago, I'm down to one, and that's Screams Volume 2. And I'm my collection goal was not to skip anything. So I'm after variants. I'm after all the different retail packaging of the games. I'm after things that aren't even games, like the Netlink browsers and the demos, the things that were offered to store kiosks but not available to the public. Anything that I could get my hands on Saturn-wise was something that I was on my list. And it's been kind of interesting. The more that I deep dived into this system, the more information would pop up and more things that I would discover. For example, this year I recently found out that several games, a couple of common ones, a couple of uncommon ones, actually have code revisions on the disc. So a second printing of the game had a different version than the first printing. like version number increment. And to me, that's fascinating for that to know that they were doing that on the Saturn. And I know that we've heard about like censorship or editing that has gone into other games, like when they scout some of the different enemies and some of the music in like Moonwalker, for example, on the Genesis. But no one really knew. No one told me over these years that there were code updates, and I went after those too. It's just kind of crazy, and like we all have different kinds of collections in mind, and that kind of brings us to like their main topic, which I want to discuss with us for the next 25 minutes or so, is collecting for the system and what everyone's personal goals are. But right before we do that, I wanted to find out, while you guys were collecting, you've had tips, tricks, things that you did to figure out whether or not the game was worth picking up, whether or not it was damaged, ways of making it cheaper on yourselves. And so I wanted just to see, all of us as collectors, what tips did you guys have for the listener, for picking up games?
You want to start, John?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start. I think the biggest thing, and the one thing I see a lot of people do that actually is a mistake, is they'll bypass some of the common stuff that they see because they're going after like the more expensive stuff. And the thing that you need to know about Saturn is you need to collect everything that you see now, because there's deserts out there, places that have very few Saturn items, and there's other places that have a ton. But even getting cheaper games in person, you can use those cases, especially in good case, and if they're not cracked and messed up, for your other games. And so that's my big tip, is that if you find a deal on something, don't focus. I mean, I guess focus if you're just going for the stuff you want to play, like Patrick, I think you were talking about. The stuff that you just like to play, and that's fine. But I think but if you're going for like a set or a comprehensive collection, you can't really bypass stuff that you find, especially if it's a good price. It's kind of a mistake if you do. And it's so hard to find Saturn stuff, especially on the West Coast. I mean, it's been pretty dry. There's stuff here and there, and only now with the prices where they're at, you're starting to see more of it at shows. But for a long time, I could tell you didn't see a ton of it. And if you did see some of it, it was kind of picked over. But so that's just my one tip. I'm not going to say a bunch of tips. I'll let others chime in. But I say if you see good games at good prices, get them now.
Yeah, in Arizona, it's quite literally a desert in terms of Saturn games. I mean, like, I think the rarest thing I've ever seen at any Goodwill was a Magic Knight Ray Earth that was marked up to like $500. Like 2-3 years ago. So
Jesus, that's not a good one.
That's more like a good grief.
Yeah, it's a good grief. But yeah, Arizona, there's like nothing out here. Even the shops, they don't really, like the gaming shops, they don't really have anything crazy. Like maybe Panzer once in a while, but there's nothing that's out of the ordinary or something. It's usually common or rare common games, but it's just really the way it is. I mean, Saturn really wasn't popular anywhere. I mean, I didn't see anything at all when I lived out east either, so it's not like, I think it's just a state thing. Japanese game though, it's pretty common though.
Before I go to a tip, I will go with the state thing, because I'm here in the South, so I'm here in Dallas. I used to be in Arkansas, but like Texas, Arkansas, Louisiana, Alabama, and that region, that southern region, for some reason we have overabundance of Saturn and like Saturn games and Genesis too. It was just the thing down here, and also Nintendo. I see Saturn stuff all the time. There's just like right now, I can easily pick up 40 Saturn games and good titles, and it's weird to me. But then when I hear people talk about you guys, you say like it's a desert, and I'm like, it is crazy. Like, wow, it's far few in between. It's crazy. Is it like that? But I don't know. I think it's just a southern thing that guess we love our Sega down here, and it's always, and people just didn't really hold on to. I mean, they held on to it, but they didn't hold on to it because since I guess also another thing, Walmart was such a big distributor, so I guess some of that stuff from Walmart and there's a lot of retro game stores down here too. So I'm always to knock stuff out down here real quick,
Steve, when you were doing your collecting, were you picking up a lot of like sets of games?
Yes, I would. So this is how I achieved my goal. And I guess this is kind of a tip inside of there. Whenever I went and bought my games, I always. And another thing too is like the southern region have a lot of garage sales, yard sales, whatever you want to call it. So I would go there and I'd take like $100 for the weekend, and I would just load up on trade bait. I would just buy all kind of stuff, especially like controllers. Now it's not so much because GameStop stopped it, but Wii controllers, Xbox controllers, PlayStation 3 controllers, you can find those like for $2 a piece. Sometimes you can I remember one time I went to Goodwill and I got 8 Wii controllers, the hookups to the TV, there's a bar. I got all that for $10. And I'm like, dude, you serious? They said, yeah, let's go ahead. Because this guy came in here and bought all the Wii U system. I said, okay. So I took that and flipped that at GameStop and got money to go back and buy more Saturn games, stuff like that. So you buy, flip, learn how to do that. Also, too, another thing, once you buy a lot of stuff from different people, don't do it just to get stuff out of people. Make relationships. People, I hate when I see people complain about this. They worry so much about getting a price for a game, but they forget about making a relationship with somebody. Like, you gotta make a relationship with somebody. It's like John. John didn't really know me for nothing, but we had a couple things on Facebook here and there and stuff. And John has probably 1,000 people talking to him and stuff, But then once we find a common bond, and I say, hey, John, I saw him at PGRE, and I just start talking and develop a friendship, like, hey, man, I'll do something for you, not because I want him to do something for me, because out of the kindness of my heart, I know he's a great guy. I know he's a good dude. You want to do stuff for people. You want to take care of your fellow gamer. It's too many. It's so many games. Games gonna be here when we leave. We can't take games with us. We need to enjoy them here now. But make sure to take care. Make a relationship. A relationship is the most important thing in collecting. I tell you that for anybody. Just like we had tonight, we had like a big buy sell trade meet. One instant, I'm going for, I guess now, GameCube collection. So somebody had Fire Emblem. I had a Nintendo SP, the Nintendo version. Guy wanted it, and I was gonna sell it for $100. The guy wanted for the GameCube game, he wanted it for $125, and I said, you know what? He helped talk him down to $100 for the Path of Radiance. I said, okay, cool. And I said, man, since you talked him down for that, I'm gonna let you have this game, this SP for $75. And he said, really? Yeah. So he gave him the $75, and I just PayPal him $25. And we all got what we wanted because we took care of each other. We weren't trying to be greedy. So that's what I'm saying. That's the biggest tip. Take care of your fellow gamer, because you never know how it's gonna come back on you. I can tell you, it was so fun at PGRE that I got 2-3 free games, and I just being nice to people. I'm not doing it so I can get free games. Listen to me, don't do it to get free stuff. Do it to be kind, because I'm telling you, it will come back tenfold.
Man, I have to say that was a great tip. Like, have the deals come to you. Make those relationships. Have the guy on Facebook, hey man, I got this game you're looking for this amount of money. Have the deals come to you. Talk to them. Make friends. And hang out with them.
Yes, and hang at those, and don't leave somebody after the deal. And you know what? Sometimes you want to bite the bullet for a game. So what? The relationship is the most important thing. But I'm telling you, 9 times out of 10, that's where it's going to be, because the game is going to end up somewhere, but the relationship is going to last forever. You don't know how many good relationships I done had by video games. It's amazing. It just made me feel good. I love it,
In all honesty, the real treasure in game collecting is the relationships you make along the way.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
I can say that for personal experience. There's been many people that I've met through this hobby, through the community, particularly here in the Northwest. John being one of the most prized ones. And all of you guys are very important to me. But this tip that Steve is talking about, it's very real, and it's part of the reason I think why I wanted to do this kind of cast. I want to speak to this. Just for just like a moment. Steve posted his goal, and announced, his completion of what he felt was his goal, and his complete set. And all we saw was, a lot of people congratulating and a lot of people nitpicking. And I'm gonna be frank. I mean, those people are. I know I get super technical. I get super anal about how we pronounce certain things, or what things are called, because there's a technical correct answer. There wasn't like a complete collection, right? Like it's pretty much impossible, because a collection is personal. You can have every single game, but then do you have every single demo? Do you have the development tools? Do you have yourself unreleased games that no one knows about? It's going to be impossible to complete a collection under certain kinds of criteria. And watching our community tear down another person instead of building them up and congratulating them, and we're seeing things like criticisms based on the fact that he has bought his games. You know what? I've been collecting for years. You know how I got most of my games? Purchased them. I used money, like when I had spare, or if I made something at a show, or traded away, I used cash to get a game that I wanted. What's the big deal? He did it quickly. Like, I just didn't understand, and it seemed so bizarre to watch our community kind of do this.
I just think that's all the wrong mentality. You just gotta love what you collect, and you gotta not nitpick about it. Like, oh, well, it's not complete because you don't got the registration card and the rare obi and the stickers and this, that. It's like, if you like what you got and you're happy about it, you should congratulate them on it. At the end of the day, it's just gonna be you with the collection you have.
I've seen a lot of that in my journeys. Just to chime in. Sorry, just that. I with my collections, I can tell you, for every 5 people that have congratulated me, there's been 2 or 3 people that grumbled or said something mean and hurtful, and it just goes back to what Steve was saying of just bonding with the people, with the relationship. Kay, we've known each other a long time, and that's something that you just have to hold on to the people that are true and dear to your heart, and just ignore the naysayers, because there's always going to be those people. They try to process it. It's like the psychology part of it is people see someone with something, and if they don't know you, they're going to classify it into like a category, and it's just their way of trying to explain it, and especially if people that don't have great social cues are gonna put that in like a negative connotation.
Want to get to talking about the sets, but I also wanted to give a tip that I don't think a lot of people really realize. And so I'm putting this out there as someone who, I'm archiving all my games. I have a very specific goal in mind with my set, and that is to obtain anything that I can, Saturn, specifically software, but in general, anything I can Saturn. And I want to properly preserve it and make sure that it's available for generations to come. And one of the things that I have found in my collection while going on this journey was that games that look pristine, perfect looking games, discs are flawless, end up having problems. And it could be anything from a manufacturing defect to disk rot, data holes, even ones that don't look so bad, can have problems. So the tip that I want to give out to people is that it's good to build the trust relationships with everybody, but if you're looking for a game to add to your collection, ask the questions. If they hold it up to a light, do they see pinholes of light through the disc? That looks like it's missing data. Find out whether or not the disc will be able to be dumped. If you take like Image Burn or another CD image creation software, I personally use Disk Image Creator from the Redump project. See if you can dump the game without having any error correction on. Or if you're using Disk Image Creator, see if you can dump the game and it comes out without any C2 errors. Thoroughly test it, because testing a game for most people, they take a Nintendo cartridge, pop it into the system, turn it on, the game plays, it works. That's how simpler systems work, how those cartridge systems. The way optical media works, there's an executable file on there. The Saturn or any system will go ahead and run that main program and then start calling out for assets that are located on the disk. And just because the program started and it runs and you see an image on your screen and you can move your guy, doesn't mean that there isn't an asset somewhere on that game that can't be read because there's a huge hole in it. And I see people trying constantly to sell off games or trade off games that have just thousands of pinholes in them. And they say, oh, I tested it, it works just fine. But that's, once a piece of data, once that physical media has been damaged, it cannot come back. CD technology does have the ability to have error correction, it has error correction in it. So some of those pinholes, it can, play the game just fine and all the assets are fine because the calculations are available. But too many of them, and it's not going to work. You're going to hear skipping, you're going to have stuttering. Some assets may cause the game to crash because it can't load up enough data. And, you run into these things where, but I tested the game. The guy said it tested it just fine. It starts up. That's my tip for people. Rip a game, especially if it's important to you or a really expensive game. Ask the seller if they're willing to try to dump the game and show you a readout that there's no errors. Ask him to take a picture of it, on the from the shadow side, in front of a very bright light source to see if there's any data holes in it. You can't put that data back. There's no way to replace it, So with that, the last little piece of our main conversation here that I wanted to talk about is what constitutes a Saturn, like a North American Saturn set to you. We kind of went over this a little bit when we were talking about your guys' personal collecting goals. And so I just wanted to get these out as like the different options that we all see as being included or not included. John, I'd like to start with you. For reiteration purposes, you don't consider the demos and you don't consider the variants as being important in your set, right?
Correct. I consider those extras, and part of that is just going off other collections and how they're categorized. Like, I think a game set, like, I guess for me, a game set is exactly that. Something that's a complete game that was bought in retail. And then everything else is kind of in a separate category. So I guess I'll start with that by saying that when I go for like a complete set of something, it's mostly with the emphasis of game, of it being a video game and having it part of a set. And everything else is kind of extra gravy. And so even Daytona, right? I agree that I think, it is part of the set, and we could determine, how I don't classify something separate on how it was sold. If it was a game and it was offered in a market, then it's like Spider-Man Web of Fire, which I do believe is mail order as well, for Sega 32X. And so Daytona USA is kind of in that category for me, where I consider it part of the set, but I don't like demos and all that stuff. That's not a game to me, so I put that in a separate category. So does that make sense?
No, completely.
Yeah.
I want to ask this question for you.
Yeah.
With that, Christmas Nights is considered a demo. So do you consider it part of the game set or not?
Oh, it's a demo. It's a demo, even though it offers something unique. It's a demo, so it's like a bonus, and so that still would be a cherry on top. And so for me, and it gets. I guess it's also interesting too that like disc-based game consoles get very. There's a lot of asterisks. There's a lot of variations out there, PlayStation included, and to where there was maybe something offered on a demo disc that wasn't offered on a sold. And so, but for me, it's that's how I classify it.
Yeah, it's kind of funny though, because I would consider Christmas Nights in Japan to be part of the Japanese set. It's a funny antidote because it actually is sold as an actual game there.
They do a lot of weird things in Japan.
That's so true.
I know firsthand. I missed that place, but it was some weird sales. And it speaks of that also to it. Some places, you can go in some shops and you couldn't buy it because you was American at the time. I'm like, huh? Like no American sales. I'm like, oh, okay, well, bye bye.
Oh, that's a huge bummer.
Yeah, I know. There's still some places like that in Tokyo.
Really, I never knew that. So they would just not sell you anything.
Yeah, like some of my friends, I got some wrestling friends, and some places they go, they said no American.
Dang, that's a huge bummer.
I know, right? So I guess I'll talk about what I consider my full collection. I guess,
what's a full collection to you?
So a full collection to me, as I stated earlier, is any game that you can buy in the store. I don't count Daytona USA because it was a mail-in offer. Because it was one of the mail-in offers that a lot of people didn't know about. Even though it was, I'm looking at the history, because even back then, I didn't even know about it. And I guess it was, I don't know how you had to get it. One thing I saw that was in some magazines, and you had to send in, cut out the UPC code or something of Daytona USA, and then you'll get it inside of championship circuit with something else. So it was just hard to figure out. So, but also too, if I got it, I would say, okay, it's like I said, it's part of my collection, but I don't consider it a full set. I guess going for a full set for anybody is getting all the ones that you say you can go to the KB Toy Store or Walmart and buy over the counter, hand somebody some money, and then get the game. That's what I think a full set consists of. So that's why I went for it first. Okay, and then you find out the demo disc like Scream and Daytona USA is like a bonus disc, and then Christmas Nights and stuff like that, where you can get custom stuff for it, custom cases and stuff like that to add to your Sega Saturn set. Because I looked at it right now as I'm looking at my set now. I had it on a Billy bookcase, and I have it's really tight too. The picture's floating around still. It's 7 rows of games, so I says 35 games on 7. Yeah, and that's really tight. That's super tight, and that's what I consider a full set. And it's nice once it looks good. I always say you get a full set, get a black bookshelf, because that white and black contrast looks so cool.
It must be a beauty to look over, just standing up and staying in front of it and looking at it.
Yeah, I did.
Top to bottom.
Yeah, it looks really nice. Wow, I actually did it and did it so quickly. I still can't believe it, because I thought I was going to finish my Wii U set before I finished that. And just something out the blue, it just happened. I guess those 2 last big shows, and I also had some really good trade bait, as John know. That was an amazing thing. To find an amazing trade bait pushed me over the edge. Because if I didn't have them, but I still would probably be so far behind.
Yeah, speaking of Wii U set, there's still there's one by LRG that's coming out.
Oh, what now?
The Wii U set, there's a new LRG release coming out soon that they're going to push out.
Oh, great.
Those are in a separate category. just to say it.
Okay. Okay.
That's a whole other conversation, man.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted to get into. Right? So you're talking about limited run games, pushing out additional games that are not, and I mean, by their very nature, they're meant to be limited, and we get that. We look at some of the games that came out on the Saturn, and we're just strictly talking about the US, right?
Mm-hmm.
Almost all the working design games had a random disc put into the case. You didn't know which one you were going to get unless you're buying it on the secondhand market.
Oh, gosh.
How do people, how do you guys as collectors feel about the variant disc art or the
Yeah.
other releases like Knights coming in both long box form and in the pack-in version with the standard CD jewel case.
Yeah, and that's really what I find fascinating about that case, is that how differently the collecting of what a set is, what a complete US set is, because we have three different definitions where I agree with you saying that, yeah, there's a US set, but there's also the non-variant US set on top of that, which makes it even more complicated.
Can we just get an official word from Sega? Can we just do something from Sega? What did you consider a full set of all your list of games you came out with? I think then, because if they seriously, if they came out with something and said, "Hey, this is an official list of what we have," I think it would clear up a lot of confusion because as gamers, we're proud of our collections, but also too sometimes we're very confused on what it is. It's okay to be confused, but it's never okay to bash somebody else or demean somebody because they didn't get what you didn't. That's just really silly.
But a complete collection is too personal to classify, and so we're always going to argue on what something should and shouldn't be. So hey, you're my friend, and I know you have a comprehensive opinion of a game set, and I or set in general, and then I think other people well, that's not a game, so that should be in a separate category. And then there's other people what about demos and what about this and that? I think even if Sega came out with saying something, we still would have disagreements on what a complete set is. It's not like they know any more than we. Honestly speaking,
They'll probably be like, you guys actually care about the Saturn?
Yeah, some suit's going to come out and make some statement, but it's did he collect Saturn? Does he know what he's talking about? Or is he just representing the company? It's that's just my thoughts.
We just gotta go on the cliff, gotta climb up the steep mountain and bow down to the great Saturn Shiro and ask him to get the official word.
He'll punch you first.
Well, so I actually sent an email to Sega a few days ago with that very question. I got a reply back, and it was just one sentence, and it just reads, "The Saturn is not our future." So
And there you go.
Well played, Peter. Well played.
That was good. That's perfect. That was perfect.
So,
Tricky sticks are hard to make.
So, John, you're very much right. I feel that anything Sega put out that was an executable that could run on the system, designed, unmodified, to play in North America, counts as part of the North American completionist set. But I also know I'm insane. So,
and technical and anal and that just fits your fits your personality.
Getting roasted left and right over here.
No, he's my friend. I mean the positive way, but Sega is Saturn is your life, and therefore that doesn't surprise me that you have that opinion.
Right, and so for me, I had to start breaking it down. So he couldn't be here tonight, but Dave Hickman, who comes on every once in a while, and John knows him. He helps us run the tournaments over at Cowlitz and stuff. He and I looked at this question a couple of days ago, and also probably about 2 or 3 years ago. What was my collection goal? And as it became more and more clear, especially with Dawn and those unreleased games and things of that nature, I want to come at it from a preservationist, kind of perspective. And to me, preserving everything that was able to run is the most important, aspect of it. But for a collection, I would start with, let's say it's everything, and then start whittling away bits and pieces for people that, it just doesn't matter. A lot of people consider Daytona Netlink to be a variant, and they look at it the same way that they would look at the disc variants for working design games. Reality is, it's different code, so it's a different game. And for me, if you want to say that you have every game on the Saturn, then you don't need to have all the different variants of Magic Knight, but you would probably want to have Daytona Netlink, you probably want to have Virtual On Netlink. You're going to probably want Christmas Nights because it's something that was very unique. Even if it was only one level, it was still different code. But we never hear anyone talk about, hey, I got both the version 2 and the version 3 version of the Netlink browser, because no one cares, right? Like, it's a browser. And that brings me to something that I don't know is in either of your guys' collections. Peter, I'm not sure if you have this either, but the Saturn Obscura for our show is the Sega Saturn cleaning kit. It is an actual executable. It was actually put out retail by a company called C7. They're ridiculously hard to find, and it has some of the worst animation you've seen ever.
I don't know. I thought it was pretty nice, Kay.
Okay.
Thought it was pretty good looking.
So, tell me, if you guys were only after games, this would not even, cross the realm of possibility. But if you were looking for a complete set of anything that was released in the retail market, would you consider this very obscure, honestly horrendously done executable program to be part of this set? Would it need to be included?
No.
Well, I mean, it all goes back to what you define as a set. So, like, if a set means everything, accessories, demos. I mean, where does the line end? Does that include everything? Does that include every peripheral, every, if you're going for like everything, then it would be in the everything category. But
I think our scope is mostly just the software of the games instead of the peripheral stuff.
Software, and then software typically gets divided with many collections, game and non-game. And this goes back to the Digipress guides that have been out for 10, 15 years. And so I would say I would classify the cleaning kit as a separate software category, not connected to the games. But, most people, would not look at all software being part of the set. It would just be, it would be in some type of comprehensive category. But that's just my...
You go to the fact that having every game in the set, well, it's not really much of a game. I mean, unless pressing a button to make a disc spin on your laser and clean it is a game. But I guess that boils down to what is a game, and that's like theory stuff that's beyond the scope of this cast. And beyond the scope of my pedigree.
Hey, Peter, what about you? Did you ever get your hands on the cleaning kit?
Oh boy. Okay, so I actually came across the cleaning kit twice, both times at retail. And the first time it was, I think if I remember, somewhat less than an actual game. But I thought it was just a joke, so I didn't pick it up. And then the second time I came across it, it was on clearance, and so it was just selling for pennies. And again, I passed on it, and these would have been both brand new at the time. And because I thought to myself, like, this is garbage. To be very honest with you, I think it's on the back cover or whatever, there's a picture of like a cartoon drawing of Sonic and Tails, and it's like, let Sonic and Tails clean your Saturn laser or whatever, and it just looked like pure cheese. So I passed on it. But that said, I mean, Kay, you're right. It does have a Saturn, code on it. It will technically play. So, I personally categorize it in the same sort of slot as, for example, the Lost and Found games. These are things that are going to, spin and play on your Saturn, but they're sort of in that other category. So I personally don't have it. I'm not overly interested in picking it up per se. It's just, to me, it's just one of those weird oddities more than anything.
I don't think that you can actually spin up Lost and Found without some sort of boot disc or modified Saturn, though.
Yeah, that's true. You've got a point there. And I mean, I have a friend who picked up the cleaning kit, and inside was the Saturn disc, and it had some bristles built into the CD side that would actually sort of go over your laser lens. And I believe it also had like this little vial of some sort of a liquid. Yep. Anyways, this friend of mine ended up drinking this liquid by mistake one day, and like he vomited for days, and so it was another sort of turn off for me. So I never ended up getting it.
You never took a sip?
No, I didn't. No.
Did the same friend lick the back of a Nintendo Switch cartridge?
He could have died if he had too much.
That stuff is
Could have.
wow. What a story.
Ugh.
Okay, so we touched a little bit about variants on discs, but what about content? So let's assume that a complete game, right? Now we're going just one step beyond the disc, right? But we're talking about box, manual, case art, inserts, or extras that come with these. Some of these games, particularly the working designs for Magic Knight Ray Earth and Dragon Force, came with stickers. Some of them had mail-in offers that you had to cut out the registration card for. One of them had 3D glasses in it. What are you guys' thoughts about the completeness of a particular game, whether it has these particular items or not? John, how about you?
Well, this is one of those things where, I'm collecting many different sets, and you get people that just get super, super focused on the complete of something. And in general, a game to me is I would say, which is, there's discussions on what CIB means to people and what, and so for me, a game that has the disc, manual, and case and spine art is a level of complete good enough for me personally. But some other people say it can't be complete unless it has all the extra stuff that came via retail. So the warranty card, if they had extra things, if there's everything has to be included. So that's super important to people. And I think this comes down to, if you have a complete game collection of something, that complete can be defined differently. And so I think at least it has to include the case, the manual, and the disc, and the other things which Rick Weiss once defined as goodies. Those if you're saying you have a complete game collection, then that does have to be included. And so, especially if it was offered in retail. Now, send away stuff is subjective because that wasn't offered in the package when you bought it new. And so you might have to destroy part of the game to get part of the game. So that's debatable. But for me, that doesn't really count. The variation stuff, that's extreme. But I think asking for a complete copy of something, I think many collectors would agree with that.
Hey, how about you, Steve?
I agree. When you just talking about Dragon Force, I just pulled out my Dragon Force to see what it had in there because I never looked, and it has this backup RAM cartridge sticker. And
what sticker did you get?
Oh goodness! I
what sticker did you get?
Let me see. It says backup RAM Dragon Force. I haven't even played this game, so I don't know the characters. That's so bad. I need to play this.
Aww.
I know, right? Where everybody, hey, you got so many games, you haven't played them all? Not every last one of them. But the guy and the girl with the blue hair.
Ah, nice.
And then the disc is with the girl with the blue or greenish hair.
Yeah, Astea.
Yeah.
You have the sticker I'm missing.
You can't have it. No.
God darn it.
Time to build that relationship, Kay.
I know, right? I do, but I'm one of them type of people that I love the little goodies inside. I'm a big thing about swag with games and stuff like that. I always try to get the little extra stuff and put it in there. It just makes the game feel like more special for me. I don't know, I like that pecking feel. I guess because I grew up within the age of, when you get prizes in cereal and stuff. So that's how I got my first cameras, actually through a Cheerios box. I had to send away to get my own camera. So yeah, I think I like this stuff like that. I think it makes it more complete. Like I said, CIB is to me is you got to have front and back case, a really good manual, and the disc. And if it did have like stickers, say like Magic Knight Ray Earth, that's debatable on that. But long as a good CIB, I think it has to have all that stuff in there and make sure it's a really good. It doesn't have to be water damaged because we've seen some Sega Saturn games that's been I ran into a couple of these before on my journey, and I just had to sell those off. But you get the game, but the back would be water damage, and also too like the instruction book would be like just crispy, like that, like a taco crispy, and just be I hate that, and you have to like I ran into a stale like that, and I had to trade that off or sell that off at a cheap price because I got that in a bundle, but I hated that. It was a really good. I kept the disc, but just the other stuff was just like horrible. The case is great. It was just horrible.
Hey, Peter, how about you?
Okay, so I've really wrestled with exactly what is complete and like a full set, and was available to the public. I consider it, part of the set. And in terms of a complete game, if it had special extras, like for example a backup RAM sticker or maybe the 3D glasses or whatever, then obviously that's necessary to me. Where I think I get a little bit hazy is some of the games had generic inserts, and so you could have like 20 different games that would have potentially all had the same insert. Like for example, send in proof of purchase of 3 games, get 1 free or whatever. That's a lot less important to me. If I buy them and they include it, that's great, but it's not going to turn me off if it doesn't, because it's really tough to sort of figure out, what should it have come with back in the day? What did it include? What didn't it include? And so for me, game, case, manual, and then any extras that actually came with it, that's what makes it complete for me.
I'm kind of the same way with Peter. That the generic, like the slide in or stuff like that, or the actual case itself, I don't really think that matters much, as long as it's the content that was exclusive on that or came with it. So if it's like some case that can be switched out, I'm not going to ask for like $10 less because it's not the original Saturn case on it.
The reason I brought this particular piece up is my copy of Contra for Saturn did not come with the 3D glasses, and I spent ages looking for those glasses.
Mine too.
I spent ages looking for those silly RAM stickers after I figured out that they all came with them. So what I ended up doing, and maybe this is counts as a foul on my part. I'll have to put myself at the mercy of the court. But PlayStation version, like the first version of that same game on the PlayStation, was a double CD case, and it included a folded up version of the same glasses. So I bought one of those, and I took the glasses out of it, and I shoved it in my Saturn case.
My question is,
do it.
Yeah, do it. Who's gonna know unless you tell them?
You told the world.
Lie. Yeah, just lie.
You're not my friend anymore because you have a fold on your glasses.
It's like it's a PlayStation logo on the side of it instead of a Saturn one.
No, they're just folded in half to fit it inside the case on a PlayStation. That's it. And honestly, like if I ever find another copy of that game and I can find the glasses, I'll swap it out for the legit thing because I'm just that OCD. But it's little things like that, little differences that started hitting me. Like for the longest time, I thought there was just one box version of the 3D Knights controller with Knights pack-in. But there's 2 versions of it, and they actually have different UPC codes, even though they have the same, Sega-generated number. One of them has an extra piece where you can do like a scratch it.
A scratch it.
Yeah, that's it. There's like a little, scratch card to play some sort of game, enter some sort of contest.
Yeah, I would label that in the variant section of it mostly. Yeah. I wouldn't really consider that like a different game.
So when we were designing this database, because this is kind of like the semi-reveal here, is that Shiro is going to be putting together a tool to try and help the community define their goals and work as a checklist or a database. And we're going to start with everything and then let you checkbox what you actually want to include. And we were looking at this particular game and going, well, how do we do this? Because, first off, it's a variant of Knights, right? Knights has a long box, and then it has like this pack-in box with the jewel case in it. And they are different SKU numbers, right? The game itself is a different SKU number. And we had to start looking at the minutia, the real nitty-gritty details between 3 different versions of one game. we had to do this for multiple games because Virtua Fighter Remix has the same kind of problem. And in fact, I meant to ask this of you, Steve. The copies of Virtua Fighter 2, the original Daytona USA, and Virtua Cop that you have, are they all the long box versions, or are they the ones from the 3 free games pack?
I have the 3 free games pack. I have I just now for some reason when I bought 2 copies of Virtua Fighter Remix, I got a red and blue disc, and so I just keep on to that. And then Virtua Cop, I have Virtua Cop 1 and 2 are the long disc, and I think I have. Let me look and see. What is this at?
How about you, John? While we're waiting.
Yeah.
For Steve.
Oh, I got Virtua Fighter Remix short box. I don't have a long box. I'm looking for the long box. The only reason I'm looking for the box because I like how it sits on the shelf, and that's a variant I really like to find.
Sure.
I don't have the Canadian with the Virtua Fighter long box, but I have the 3 free with the other long boxes of the other ones. I also want to add to your database that certain employees at Working Designs had their games stamped, and I have one of those from Working Designs Irons. And so there's a stamp inside, like promotional use only, a stamp for an employee who probably took it home to play it so that they could be better at their job. Wanted to note that's another thing that maybe a lot of people don't know about. So, but getting back to that, yeah, it's a never ending. We're gonna find stuff moving. I'm sure there's other information out there, people that worked on games that have information and variations and stuff out there that is yet to be found.
There's still that elusive Akira RPG side story disc as well. That's somewhere out there.
Really?
Yeah.
You mean the movie?
No, the demo, the beta for Shenmue, because it was really Akira. It was Virtual Fighter RPG Akira side story or something like that.
Oh, okay. I thought you were talking about Akira, the anime, the big anime. So, okay.
No, I'd play that in a second. Yeah, that's a great game.
So, just getting back to the 3 free games for a moment, the reason why I mentioned that is that that's one of those that you couldn't just go in and buy, right? Like it was a 3-game pack. And that was one of a more interesting, dilemma that Dave and I were running into, because technically each of those discs counts as a variant of the long box version, but the packaging in of itself is separate. And that whole packaging, because it was not for resale, was considered part of the promotional or demo aspect of things. So we have to categorize some of these games in more than one way. And it was fascinating to me on top of that, because the box for the 3 free games has a variant. So you have a variant within a variant within a variant.
Really? And what's this variant look like?
One of them has a coupon, a yellow corner, and the other one doesn't. It mentions that it has a coupon inside or something like that. There's actually, on Saturn, there is a mention of a possible 3rd variant as well, of just the casing, and doesn't even include whether or not the discs are different.
Hey, Kay, it could be worse. So it could be Atari 2600, in which there's some games that actually have 20 different variations. So it could be worse.
I'm going to blow your mind right now. Check this out. There is a Japanese game on the Saturn. It is a visual novel called You Know. That game has no less, than 32 variants. And here's the trick to it. The first time that you open it, none of them have a difference on the outside. It's all on the inner disc case art. So you have a possibility of getting between 1 and, 16 different case arts on the inside behind the first disc. And then they reproduce that same exact game in a package including a mouse. So if you wanted to get them all, theoretically you'd have to get 32 copies of that game, and you would not know whether or not you had the right disc art until opening it up.
Man, that'd make a lot of really good Frisbees. Man, because that's basically all you'd be able to use that if you're collecting for a Japanese set and you don't understand Japanese. Imagine that. I got all these 32 discs, 32 variants, and I can't play any of them.
Where are you going to put 16 copies of the mouse, in package, right, complete? It's ridiculous.
That's a YouTube channel right there. someone obsessing about getting every variation, ordering it, and opening it up online.
It's called You Know the Pain.
It's really funny. Like when we start branching from the North American set and you go into like the Japanese set, you have some games that are exactly the same game, exactly the same data, 2 completely different SKU numbers, and it's all because they had different cover art. Or you have, like, and you have 2 SKU numbers, one with the mouse, one without, and you have 16 different possible variations on the art, and you can't tell what you're getting. It's silly. And you know what? I own like 6 copies of currently.
Well, you crazy.
That's going to be the title of the YouTube channel. You know you're crazy when.
That should be the title of this episode. You know when.
I'm having a great time, you guys, and I wanted to thank John for taking some time out of his holiday schedule with his mom for hanging out with us for all this. And
it's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure, Kay and Steve and everybody. Thanks for having me on. I'd love to stay on, but I actually have to still do a video tonight for my own channel, and so I'm gonna head on out for that. And I want to say thank you. It's been a pleasure, and you guys got something awesome going on here.
Yep, thanks, John. I really appreciate it, and hopefully we can have you on sometime in the future.
Take care, guys.
All right, take care, man.
Later.
Okay, so just a couple more things that I wanted to mention in terms of collecting and what some people consider part of the set and what some people count and what some people don't. And the first is the Working Designs variant. So we've mentioned it a few times now, but most of the Saturn Working Designs releases came with different CD variants. And you would never know what you're getting when you bought them at retail because the cases and manuals were exactly the same. It's just the disc art itself that was different. I mean, even the game code, with one exception, was exactly the same across all the variants. And so, they have the same product code, the same manual and case. It's literally just the art on the discs. And so back in the day when I was doing most of my collecting in the early to mid 2000s, my goal was to pick up every single disc variant, and I did that, but I never really wanted more than one copy of, the manual and the case and all the rest of it. So I've only got one case and manual of each of the Working Designs games, but I've got all the different disc arts. And so what I've done is I've got, the little CD slips that some of the Saturn games came with for multiple disc games, and that's where I keep the different variants so that they're in the appropriate case. And so, some folks ignore the variants because it's the same game. Others want to make sure that they have every single variant, and that includes all the cases and all the manuals times 3 or 4, whatever the case may be. And in my case, it's literally just having each of the discs, but not necessarily having more than one case and manual. So that's yet another sort of quirk when it comes to North American Saturn collecting. And then the second thing I wanted to mention is silvers. So not too many people are aware of what silvers are, but essentially, once a game was more or less ready to go for pressing, to create retail discs that could be then sold, there was a very small number of silver discs that were pressed. And so they're the full game. They do have the Saturn copy protection on it, so you pop a silver into a standard retail Saturn machine and it'll run just fine. But there's absolutely no disc art on these, so it's silver on both sides. And so these were primarily used as a last sort of check before a disc went to pressing, and these were also the discs that were sent to magazines and so on and so forth for review purposes. And so there's very, very few silvers of each game that are sort of out there. And again, this isn't something that you could just buy in a store. So this is something that you would have to, you'd have to have a way to get it secondhand. But they certainly do exist. I personally happen to have a silver of Nights into Dreams, and I picked it up only because Nights happens to be my favorite Saturn game. And I've had opportunities to pick up other silvers, but I've just passed on them because they're generally quite a bit more expensive than just the regular version. But, it's something that we definitely should mention. I mean, they do exist. They're out there. They are legitimate Saturn games that, have the copy protection, so they'll play on a retail Saturn, and it's part of the Saturn universe anyways, but, not necessarily something that, you would count towards a full set.
Some of them actually go for cheaper. I mean, House of the Dead, I think, only sold for like $20 or $30.
It's crazy, but you know what, Pat? I mean, I have a feeling that it's because most people don't really know what they are. You know, if somebody was saying to you, hey, I'm going to sell you a game and it's actually got no cover art, I mean, how do you know it's not just a CDR? You know what I mean? So it may be something that people just aren't even aware of, really.
It's called PayPal Buyer's Protection.
I remember that. I think I was a challenger for that Knights for a little while too before I gave up on it.
Threw up with Peter.
Is it still out there?
Oh no. So when we brought Peter on about a year ago, there was a realization that we would be like bidding against each other in certain auctions or something like that, and we started just like sharing the information.
Oh, okay. So y'all have stuff set up for eBay auctions. Whenever something come, like, oh, here it goes, go get it.
God, I probably receive like 30 or 40 emails a day of various searches that I have on eBay and other locations, just to try to find certain things. John was talking, before he had to go, he was talking about like not making the mistake of only going after the heavy hitters, but picking up the smaller names. There are some games that people, don't even recognize as having a rare version. And I've been able to, because I've got, these search terms saved in my eBay, search list or whatever.
Yes.
I'm able to pull up, like, we got Need for Speed in America. Japan got, God, what was it? Like the Nissan.
Oh, GTR?
Yeah, I think that's what it was.
Yeah, the GTR. What about it?
Or like, was it Nissan or was it Toyota? Does anyone?
The Supra?
It was Nissan GTR, that Need for Speed version.
Okay, so that game has a variant, and the variant happens to be rare. It's weird. The collector's edition of a lot of Japanese games are actually the common one, and it's difficult to find the non-collector's edition version of some games.
Kind of like how it is here with a lot of the collector's edition of Halo and stuff like that.
Hey, Peter, you were talking about the disc variants. Do you have any care about the other variants, like the gun pack-in for Virtua Cop 1 and 2?
So, yeah, good point, Kay. And yes, I do try to have both. And so I do have, for example, Virtua Cop 2, the standard jewel case that comes in the bigger box with the Virtua gun, as well as the standalone long box. And that includes, obviously Nights into Dreams. You have the standalone long box, as well as the larger, box set with the 3D pad. And we can even talk about Virtua Fighter Remix. There's three colors of discs that you can get. There's red, blue, and purple. Were a little bit different. The purple was the standalone long box, and then the red and the blue were, one was a jewel case and one was just a cardboard slip. And I think it's because some of them were, I believe, pack-ins or mail-aways or something like that, whereas the long box was available at retail. And from what we can gather, it was actually only available for retail up here in Canada. So, believe it or not, out of the Virtua Fighter Remix variants, that was the first one I picked up, and it was extremely cheap for me. Shot up in price. But yeah, so any of that kind of variation, do try to go after that. And that does mean that, you're going to have multiple copies of certain games, but it's all part of the experience for me. So that I will definitely go after.
Pick up the standard CD size jewel case version of Sega Rally.
Oh man, okay, so I'm aware of it, and no, I don't have it yet. So I should add that to my list of things to hunt down. But yeah, I'm aware of it, yes, and it is definitely a variant for sure.
Wait a minute, you talking about the short box version of Sega Rally Championship? Is it the NetLink edition one?
No.
Okay.
No, it's a really weird one. I can't find much information about it, but I own 2 copies of this thing, because I found it on eBay of all places, right? Just happened to be browsing around, and I noticed that there was someone selling standard size CD case version of Sega Rally, and I'm all like, what is this? And it, I believe, was supposed to be some sort of pack-in, but this guy had like 30 some odd copies of it, so I actually bought 2 of them. They were all brand new, sealed, and I kept one to open for dumping, and the other one I kept sealed.
Hmm.
So that's interesting because my Saturn came in with Sega Rally as a pack-in game. It's got a big sticker on the outside box saying, Sega Rally Championship included. And you'd think that would mean small jewel case, but it actually came in with the full retail long box, the silver copy. So it's weird.
Yeah, definitely weirdness. And I think we're going to run into that with pretty much any, collection that you do, any Saturn game, or quite frankly, I mean, any system. I mean, I looked at NES cartridges for the first time a few years ago, really looking at variants, because I was like, why does this copy of Super Mario Brothers seem so much lighter than this other copy? And we started looking at like the labels and all sorts of weird things design-wise were changed based on whether or not it was the first version, the second version, revision of the hardware back then. It was just kind of like a crazy time. And now trying to be a collector of all of these items, it makes it interesting, it makes it fascinating, and it also makes it very flippin' difficult.
All right, guys. So I'd like to thank you guys for listening to our cast today. We had some great discussion on Sega Saturn sets and strange games, strange variants. And I thought it was really interesting, and I'd like to thank both our guests, John Hancock and Stephen Wright, for stopping by and talking with us about that. Before we go, Peter, did you have any articles you'd like to plug?
Yeah, so by the time this cast drops, I would have just put out the Sonic R article. And that's just such a polarizing game, so I encourage everybody to go and have a read at that. I took a pretty good in-depth look at that. And I've also posted a screenshot gallery, and I'm going to be doing that with every article that we put out now, because I find that we get a lot of folks that really look through the screenshots. It brings back a lot of, it engages a lot of commentary from folks. And then, of course, there's a link to the article right in there. So we went ahead and did that with Cotton 2, and we've gone ahead and done that with Sonic R. And then beyond that, the next article is going to be a short little expose on Sega Saturn manuals. There's some really interesting stories in some of the manuals that came out, some oddities and some quirks. And so it's going to be a really neat article about of Sega Saturn manuals.
Nice. I'm definitely excited to check those out. I always love reading your articles, Peter.
Thanks, man.
What about you, Steve? Do you have anything to plug before we head out?
Yeah. You can check rightwayphotography.com. All my links will be there, from YouTube to Instagram, all that good stuff, I'm on Facebook, follow me there. And just type in Steve Wright Jr. They say Right Way Photo. Just follow me there, man. I'm pretty much everywhere, trying to rebuild my YouTube channel up. So go give a shout out, a like, follow, all that good stuff.
Nice. Definitely love to check that out. I always love seeing your collection photos.
I'm doing some more tips and tricks and stuff about, photography and video games, because I got a video soon about just how to take good pickup video footage, because I just hate to see how people just get new games and just throw them on the table or somewhere and it just look like crap and you can't see nothing. So I'm definitely going to try to help people out with that.
And John wasn't able to join us. He had to head out, but check out his YouTube channel, the Immortal John Hancock. You check out a lot of people like Metal Jesus Rocks. He makes several cameos in that as well. But yeah, that does it for us. Have a great night. Thank you for listening. And remember, you must play Sega Saturn.
Sega!
I'm serious about that sticker. So
He
so
wanted that
if you-
sticker.
You should sell it to me, and I'll put it on my RAM cart like I did with the rest of my
Patrick, there's a RAM cart with that sticker on it that I've been watching for 2 years. The guys had it for like $75 for 2 years. 2 years. 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 Years.